July 10th, Maize and Blue review here on a Monday. Jim Scarcelli, former Wolverine, in the house, so to speak, ready to talk about the latest in Michigan sports. We kick it off, throwing the ball, get ready to go. Scar, nice to see you. What's up?
Life is good. Anytime we get a chance to talk Michigan football, Denny, we're fired up. You got opposing coaches understanding how good a job Michigan is doing. They're talking about it. So that's a lot of good stuff to talk about.
You are right. We do have an anonymous coach comment about the Michigan program. We'll read some of those to you. We'll get Scar's opinion on that. Always, if you're out there, you got something to say. You want to make a point. You got a question for the coach. You go ahead and put it up on the screen, and we will get to it. Or you just got a comment like Gary saying it's great to be a Michigan fan. And Gary, I don't think anybody out there that's a Michigan fan would look at that and say, no, now it's not really a good time. It's a great time to be a Michigan fan. Grant Newsome, former Wolverine, current tight ends coach. Scar heard some things about Coach Newsome on a recent pod talking about the tight end room. He wanted to point something out there. Speaking of tight ends, Jake Butt, the former Michigan tight end, he put out a tweet recently about Jim Harbaugh, and one of those things that make Jim Harbaugh. And we'll read that tweet to you, and we'll see what Scar has to say about it. We've got something going on in the Big Ten that is it's a big story. I say it's going to get bigger. It's going to be talked about for a while. The Northwestern hazing story. We'll see. You can hear just where we are at with the details that have come out, at least to this point here on this Monday, July the 10th. But we're going to start with Jim Scarcelli looking at the 14 coaches in the Big Ten and then ranking them. And then we will go from there and see what, Scar has to say. Scar, how did you do this when you went through and was ranking the coaches?
And if it was like old school in the backyard, in the playground when we were kids, and there's a bunch of guys in the field, and you and I are captains, and we're picking players, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so if there's 1,000 guys, Big Ten players in the field, and there's these 14 coaches, and they all get a pick, and they rotate picks, who's the last guy I want to go against? Who's the first guy I want to go against? So I'm basing it on just if everybody's got same talent, same tradition, same program, all that kind of stuff. Okay. So I got on the bottom, and it's really not. So a lot of my evaluation, in my opinion, one of the biggest things is, have you built a program? Have you taken a down program and built it? Okay. So, I got Jim Harbaugh at the top. I'll get to him last because I think he's built 4 programs. So having built a program is big in my eyes. Okay, so on the bottom, and it's really not fair, is the guy at Purdue because he's never built a program. Okay, he's a first-time head coach, but I got him on the bottom, and it's probably not fair. So anyway, he's at 14. At 13, I got Ferentz. I don't think he's keeping up with college football. He's got Iowa has got a great tradition, great. They're the only, they got to compete against Iowa State, but I don't think he's taken it to the next level offensively. I got him at 13 because I just don't think he's does a great job offensively. I got Mel at 12 because Mel he's never built a program. He was at Colorado for 1 year, and he's got 3 years now at Michigan State, and I don't know. I think the jury is still out, so I don't have him. I got him at 12. I don't have him ranked really high. Michigan State is a good program. It's a place that can win. He took over a program that was winning. So I got him at 12. I got Ryan Day at 11. Ryan Day has never built a program, Denny. He was born on third base. He inherited the best talent in the Big Ten with great tradition, a bunch of rings on banners on the wall. And look, he still recruited well. He got lucky. I don't want to say lucky, but he got Justin Fields and Strode. He hit the jackpot with two great quarterbacks out of the blocks. But as far as I'm concerned, he hasn't built an inferior program. Now I got Fitz at 10. I think he's done he hasn't done well lately, but he has done. I'm looking at his track record. Northwestern's not an easy place to win. And I got him at 10. I'll finish up with 9, Denny, then I'll let you talk about. I got Tom Allen at 9. because I think that's the toughest job in the Big Ten, the Big Ten East. I think that job and probably the Arkansas job in the SEC West, two of the toughest jobs in college football. And Tom Allen has done a pretty good job of keeping Indiana competitive. But those are my 9 through 14. What are your thoughts on that?
I love it because, if I went through, and I actually was looking through a little bit earlier, like every year, it's one of the things, if you're in the media, you do. You're like, I'm going to go ahead and rank the Big Ten coaches. And you go through it, and you mostly have guys, with pretty similar type list. Your list is not anything close to what I was looking at before I came on today. And the first one that jumps out, and that I agree with you, I've never thought that Kirk Ferentz was a very good coach. I've seen him botch some things, I think, defensively, like you're saying, but there's two sides of the ball there, and the offense is so bad, and he has been so slow to adjust. And him staying with his son and putting him in there smacks of nepotism. And it's just, I think the game has passed him by a long time ago. So I am with you on that. Now, as much as I like to joke about first base and everything, his
Third base.
Yeah, well, I put him back all the way to first. These last 2 years, certainly he came into a great situation. I'm not going to knock a guy that comes into a great situation. And, there's something to be said about building a program from scratch, certainly. But just because he went in and everything was going, he still was able to take the team and, get him to the college football, get him, won, I don't know how many, they won 3 Big Ten titles in a row since he was there. Did he get all 3 of those? I'd have to look, and he's been pretty good, what I'd say. So I wouldn't have him as low, but hey, that's just me. I'm not going to agree with everything that you say, but I really like how you have Ferentz down there. Not everybody, most people have Ferentz closer to the top than the bottom.
All right, here we go. Number 8 is Mike Loxley. I think he's always been a great recruiter, great assistant. He didn't get it done at New Mexico, his first opportunity as an assistant, but he's showing it now at Maryland, and there's something to be dealt with. They're recruiting, and he's coaching, and he's doing a good job. I got Schiano at 7. Schiano has built Rutgers. I mean, he put them on the map. He's the reason they're in the Big Ten, because he was able to take Rutgers when they were really nothing and get them on national television. And that is a real tough job too. Rutgers is a tough place to coach, but there's a lot of talent in New Jersey if you can recruit them. I got Fleck at 6. Fleck built Western Michigan into a winner. He's a great recruiter. He's a good coach. He's a lot better coach than I initially thought he was. He does a good job scheming it up and teaching. And he's got Minnesota going, man. It's going to be a tough game for us going there. I got Fleck at 6, built Western, and he's made improvements. He keeps the trajectory is going up in Minneapolis. I got Fickle at 5. Fickle has built Cincinnati. He was a darn good assistant at Ohio State. He took Cincinnati to the playoff, and a tough place to recruit. And he's competed, and I think he's a good coach. Again, when I get to the top now, these are going to be guys that have proven at small places. I got Rule at 4. He won at Temple, took over something that wasn't great at Temple. He won at Baylor, took over that was in a mess, a bunch of chaos with the other guy that left. He didn't get it done in the pros, but I think Matt Rule is a really good coach, good recruiter. And first year we'll see how he does, but he's a proven guy. I got Dennis Franklin at 3. He won at Vanderbilt. If you can build Vanderbilt into a winner, and he's got Penn State right there year in, year out. He's beaten Ohio State a few times. Franklin has done a good job. He keeps recruiting, and he's a good coach. Now, Bielema, I went back and forth with my top 3, my 2, 3, and 4. I got Bielema at 2. He didn't get it done at Arkansas, but he was a good coach. He inherited a great team at Wisconsin. So Barry left him a lot of good players there. But I just, based on what he's done this last year, and he's worked under Belichick now, and I think he's a better coach than he was when he was at Arkansas. And he's just a good coach. I think he's built some things. I got Jim at number 1. Jim is 4-0 as far as I'm concerned. He took over San Diego. They were losers. He built them. Took over Stanford. They were terrible. He turned them into a winner. He took over San Fran. They were losers, took them to the Super Bowl, took over Michigan at a tough time when Michigan State and Ohio State, our biggest rivals, were at the top of their game. It took him many more years than we would have liked, but he's got it going in the right direction. So that's my ranking 1 through 14.
Not bad. Wesley saying that you knew Scar would slant it towards Harbaugh. Do you feel like you're slanting it towards Jim Harbaugh? Scar, what about that charge?
Hey, I'm keeping it. Look, he's built 4 programs. So, if you want to debate that, I mean, we could, but I think the proof is there, man. He's again, he didn't get it done as quickly as he did at Stanford and as quickly as he did with the 49ers, but I think he's getting his groove. He's got his offense and defense where he wants them. And I just believe that if I had to coach against any of these guys, that's honestly how I would stack them up. That's who I would want to coach against and who I would not want to coach against. It's just what I believe. If they all had equal facilities, equal tradition, equal talent, Jim's the last guy I want to go against. Okay, give me Ryan. I'd take Ryan Day in a minute before Jim, just because I think Jim is tougher to defend. I think his defense is better. I just think I just think the culture is better. I think he's proven it, man. That's okay. I don't know. Am I biased? I'm trying not to be, but those are my arguments. Those are my points.
Even if you are biased, I would agree with you that Jim Harbaugh would be number one. I try not to be biased. I try to give people an honest opinion about what I think, but I do think that Jim Harbaugh is number one at that list. Now, I don't know if this was because of a bias or because you're working with somebody named Dennis, and there was a great quarterback in Michigan history named Dennis Franklin, but you called James Franklin Dennis Franklin. But we all knew.
Did I say that? I'm sorry.
Yeah, we all knew what you were talking about. And so, it's almost like we know. I hesitated even to say anything about that. Now, I'm not as high on Bielema. Back to his Wisconsin days, he was a disaster down in Arkansas, and everybody was propping him up last year, acting like he was so great. Then they fizzled out. But they played pretty well against Michigan. I think I would put Fleck a little bit higher than you, and I'd be a little bit more down on Brett. But that's me, and I'd have also had first base a little bit higher than towards the bottom. I'd have had him closer to the top. But I like it, Scar. You did not just go out there and copy and paste. Not saying that these guys that worked in the media do, but I think they looked at a lot of the 14 and like, oh yeah, well, so-and-so saying it. How could I not put him up there? But good job on that. I like how you walk through it, and you were looking at it like, hey, all 14 guys, hey, let's take him. If we did this last week, I'd have had Fitzgerald a lot higher on that list. I think in a week's time, I don't think you're going to be able to rank him because I don't think he's going to be on the staff there at Northwestern as the head coach. But we'll get to that coming up a little bit later when we talk about that hazing situation that I see people that are mentioning when it comes up into the comments already. So good job, Scar. Nice job. All right. Well, let's get to, that's not what I was going to get to. Hold on a second. Let me just move it on back here to what's coming up next. And that is Athlon Sports. Athlon Sports asked an anonymous coaches around the country to give their reviews about other programs. And there was an anonymous coach that gave his thoughts on Michigan. And let me just read the thoughts of what the coach had to say. You ready? This is from an anonymous coach on Michigan. Last season really sealed it for them. This is a different program. The gap between them and Ohio State hasn't been this close in decades. It's reload, not rebuild, which is something they have never been able to claim like an Ohio State or SEC team. The transfers are good. The backfield is great. The quarterback is great. They've got speed on the edges, and defensively, they're consistent and smart. It's proof of concept now. That's why they've stepped it up in recruiting. Jim Harbaugh has also found a niche inside the portal. They breed the culture into those guys. It's elitist, but that's built on confidence And the only thing they lack right now is that big one win at national title level. There's no reason they should have lost to TCU, and they definitely know it, but they didn't do anything crazy in response. And remember, Jim's a distraction, but not to Jim. And the very top, that's calm, consistent culture. All right, Scar, what do you think of the anonymous coach and what he had to say?
I think it's a great compliment. And that's something, I wish I knew who it was. Initially, I thought it was a Big Ten coach. And I was trying to do, I don't think it was anybody from the Big Ten East. I don't think anybody would. It was someone that obviously has a good amount of respect for Jim. I thought it might have been PJ Fleck. I think they have a decent relationship. But proof of concept was something that, it's basically saying, look, this is what we are now. This is what you do offensively. And that's the way I defined that statement. Proof of concept, is this is what you do on offense. This is what you do on defense, special team. This is how you, this kind of coaches you hire, and the whole system. And it's a good thing. And the one little quote he had there at the end. And remember, Jim's a distraction. Well, that's, I think, what some other people in the media or some of the enemy they want to keep saying Jim's, he's climbing trees and all this other stuff, right? That's the kind of the media or the enemy, the people recruiting against them narrative. But Jim doesn't see it like that. That's how he is, And I think that that's a great compliment too. If somebody's telling me that I have a calm, consistent culture, that's a hell of a compliment to me as a leader. So yeah, this coach is right on time with a lot of things. They should have beat TCU. They feel bad about it, and they are reloading. They're not rebuilding. And he's getting them to the point where, you can compete with these top schools year in, year out, and confident. They're a confident team. But that comes with winning. That comes the confidence. You can talk about things and build them up and try to build your team and give them confidence. It's hard when you're 1-11. It's hard when you're 3-9. But, now that we're winning and we're building, that's a hell of a lot easier to do.
Jason asking, why would you compliment anonymously? Very well spoken and quoted.
Denny, these guys are, to be honest, I give the guy respect, because if he says something positive about another guy, it could someone will twist it in his administration or whatever that is going to hurt that school's recruiting. You know what I mean? It's shameful that's probably how it is. That if that is PJ Fleck. Someone might say, why are you complimenting Harbaugh? You know what I mean? It's going to hurt your recruiting. Don't say nothing good about him. So that's kind of the mentality, I think, with some people. But I give the guy credit.
Yeah, for sure what you're saying there. It's, it's easy to say why you would, criticize somebody anonymously, because that's going to come back and it would be fuel to the fire. But it's the same thing. If that was PJ Fleck, and I was a Gopher fan, I'd say, why don't you go get a room with Harbaugh? Why don't you try using
somebody? There you go. That's what I'm saying. That's why, because the media or people will spin it, people in your camp, hey, they're doing good enough in recruiting. Don't help them out by telling them how good they're doing. So I give the guy credit. Look, there's guys I coached against that I would give, someone asked me anonymously. It's different in high school because I'm not recruiting against those guys,
Yeah, and some people don't like the anonymous, and you get that. It's not only much stronger. I mean, it means everything when you're able to put a name next to it. But you do just get a little bit, even when criticism or compliment, you get a little bit of a feel for what somebody else is saying, and it's not all that bad. Gary,
Denny, though, the wording and language that guy used is definitely from a head coach, and it's a smart guy, and he definitely understands Michigan's program. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, it sounds like he's angling for a job. Now, before we get to what you had we get to some tight end talk. Gary asking a question about the kickers and how they're doing at Michigan, the place kickers and the punters. And we know they have to replace Jake Moody and Brad Robbins. Tommy Doman is going to be your punter, and we know he's got the leg, and we saw him airing it out at the spring game. And Michigan is going to have at least 4 guys vying for that place kicking job. The transfer from Louisville, the transfer from Mississippi State, They have an incoming freshman that was not in for spring, who is at Huron, Ann Arbor Huron, and Samaha. And then they had a preferred walk-on who I don't think was in for spring either. So between those four guys, and both the Louisville kicker has had the most experience, and he had pretty good percentage, like 40 yards. I don't know if it was 45 or 40 yards. I'd have to look, but a pretty good percentage of being able to kick the ball at a shorter distance. The thing about, who it's going to be, and who it would be on a longer field goal, whether they would split the duties. And I think that regardless if they're smacking them through the uprights with no rush right now from 60 yards, that's all great. But as the days go by here, fall camp is going to be huge. Obviously, they're going to try to do everything they can to get those guys under pressure and duress and everything else. But then obviously, when you're kicking in front of 110,000, or if you're on the road and you got the team, then it can be everything else. I mean, it's like shooting free throws, Scar, or hitting a drive out on the golf course. You can do it all day long, but until you're out there and there's some pressure on you, it's way different.
Yeah, Danny, I know what it is to just to play in a scrimmage at Michigan and then play in a game. Okay, in the stress differential between playing in a scrimmage and now going into 100,000 and the elevated stress. I'm just going to guess and say that the quarterback and the kicker, they don't have a bunch of reps. That kicker goes out there and he doesn't get he doesn't get multiple reps to get acclimated to a game. So I think the guy out, like I've said this before, I'd like to think that we come out of those first three games with somebody who's tested and we are solidified. And the guy, he's proven that he can handle some stress. I thought we're going to have stressful kicks in those early games, but I'd like to think that by, after Rutgers and before we go to East Lansing, we know who our guy is. And hopefully he kicked a couple of, and he's a confident kid. Going to East Lansing and going to Nebraska, places like that.
Yeah, I think the idea of having one and not multiple, it was just a few years ago that they had Nordine and Moody, Nordine for the long kicks and Moody for the short ones. And I was like, man, I don't like two kickers. And they were both pretty good. Both of those guys ended up in the NFL. If you got a kicker that's more accurate short range and you got a guy with a great leg, I don't know. So I don't like that. I'd like you're talking about, to get into the conference and feel pretty good about one guy. But, you got to see what they're going to be able to bring to the table.
Yeah. So anyway, well, it's a position we got to figure it out. He's got to sort it out like a couple other positions. That's
right. JP just wants to fix some red zone issues, and then you just worry about kicking the extra points. And
that's right. That would be beautiful.
All right. Scar, let's talk some tight ends. You have Grant Newsome, former offensive lineman at Michigan, but now he has stayed with the Maize and Blue, and he is a full-time head coach, second year as tight ends coach, and he was recently on the Inside the Trenches podcast with John Jansen talking about the tight ends. And what was your takeaway as you listened to that?
I listened to him talk, and I'm just really impressed with him. And it's one of those things. You want to know why I got Jim Harbaugh rated as the top head coach? Hiring this guy, who has the vision to hire this young guy, was a great player, and fast track him into he's a paid full-time coach. It normally doesn't happen to go that quick into a job like Michigan. And Jim fast tracked him, and he's paying off. He's a darn good coach. I watched him coach, and he's a great recruiter. And, give credit to Jim for recognizing that talent. But I listened to his thoughts. He was really, he's really high, and he's seeing, he's seeing his tight ends just like I saw him. He's got 5 guys he thinks can play, that can block, that can. And he talked about, he saw Loveland the same way I saw him. Like, look, he just wasn't physically ready last year to be the kind of, blocking tight end that Michigan needs. And he did the best he could with being a young kid. He'll be a better blocker this year. But he talked about having a smart bunch, and that he thinks they're all going to be able to be better blockers. And what else did I see here? Anyway, that I just he he was talking about his tight ends, and he feels really good about 5 of them. So that was good to hear because, like I said, last year we had one guy that could only block. We couldn't throw to him. We had another kid that we could only throw to him that couldn't block. And then we had one full-time, all Big Ten tight end that got banged up. Now, if we got 5 guys that can do something similar to what Schooney gave us, now that we got something going.
Yeah, and you kept mentioning this during the spring game, and sometimes you hear it's just like a coach saying, "Yeah, I like all 5 guys." Like, well, that sounds like coach speak, but it sounded a little bit like coach speak when you were watching the spring game. But you were going through the film, all of the guys that they have, they seem like they're clones of each other. They're all about 6'5", 255. I mean, they're right down to it, like every one of them. And you would think Loveland, coming from Idaho and playing whatever, they just play with 8 guys, 9 guys, and he's like the superstar out there. They weren't asking him to block a little bit more, but he's a little bit bigger. Barner was impressive. He impressed you on the film. There's a guy that's ready to mix it up and put his hat on somebody. And Hibner, Bredesen, Klein, they've got 2 freshmen. I mean, if they like 5 of them, I know Loveland, I feel pretty good about him. And then, between Barner and Bredesen and Klein, they'll have another one. You can only have so many tight ends, but it's also Harbaugh. He might have 3 out there at different times. So it's nice to have. And the thing that you pointed on that I think you should underscore here, Scar, is that you put any of those 5 guys out there and they all kind of look alike. They all kind of do the same things, and you don't really know what's happening. It's like if
right, Danny, if I put any 2 of those in the game, one on the left or one on the right, I don't want the defense to know which side we're running to, and I don't want the defense to know which of those guys we might throw to. Okay, and last year there was a definite, hey, 84's in the game. They ain't throwing the ball to them. Okay, this year, we got 5 guys that can do both. So that's what those were some of the things he was saying, and he's, that's a great thing.
2 questions for you, Scar. Shadyville says, is Grant Newsome the next offensive line coach? Currently, Sharon Moore, as well as being the offensive coordinator, is the offensive line coach. So Grant Newsome, a former offensive line coach.
He could be, that's a great transition. And that's what you look, when you watch Jim Harbaugh, Jim gets it, man. The way you're able to bring in great assistant coaches is, hey, look, you let them coach, you pay them well. But another thing is you develop them to be a head coach. Okay. Jay Harbaugh has coached 4 or 5 different positions. Now he had Bellamy coaching DBs last year. Now he's coaching receivers. It makes him more marketable, And so when you challenge a guy, I did that with my coaches too. You got to get them out of their comfort zone. Hey, I know you can coach linebackers. Go coach secondary. Go coach D-line. So that now when a head coaching job opens up, you could, you're more marketable. So that's something Jim does, and he could be the next O-line coach for those reasons too.
What's up, Mello? He's kind of a new participant. I like him, even though it doesn't seem like he's the biggest Michigan fan. That's okay. How about this point from GAM? He says, sports psychologists he's heard say stable confidence is permission to succeed and fail. Pretty easy to live with for golf, tennis, baseball, etc. But kicking with 100,000 at the big house. And Scar, I've said this before. I got to say it one more time. There's probably, back when I was working in Detroit, I went to a lot of Pistons practices, and probably 50 of them. And I saw Ben Wallace shooting free throws and shooting jumpers at these practices. And I would see Ben Wallace. I would watch him at the free throw line. 1, 2, 10 in a row, 20. He's knocking them down, 20 out of 25. I mean, he was just knocking down. And then you'd go to the game, and he's the worst free throw shooter all time in NBA history. Way different than standing out there in practice and lining them up. Fear of the fro. He's just dropping them in left and right. He's a professional. He's had millions of people. He had already won a championship and everything else, but you put him out there on that line with everybody watching, and he couldn't make one to save his life.
That separates a lot of athletes, Denny, is the ability to handle the stress. And you got to try to develop that in your players. And I've seen it some of my former teammates. I mean, maybe you didn't handle the stress as well as others. Some guys are gamers. I had players that were like that. terrible in practice, great in the game, or great in practice and terrible in the game, and you got to handle the stress. But yeah, you got to try to do the best you can to develop that in a kid.
Mello asking a recruiting question about how does the Big Ten as a group allow Georgia to come in to Big Ten country and take two huge offensive linemen out of Jersey. They're Georgia. That's how my simple answer. But if you wanted to know more detail and have, some more attraction with that, you know what you should do, Mellow 7, is join up with the Maize and Blue Review today. Go to michigan.rivals.com. Or let's say you're a fan of another program. You join up on the Rivals Network and you can look at what's going on with Michigan State, Ohio State, and what's going on with Michigan. Go to michigan.rivals.com. Join the Maize and Blue Review today, and you can get those kind of questions answered. You're looking for that texture rather than me just saying, because they're Georgia, they can go in and they can recruit anywhere. A couple of days ago, Jake Butt, former Michigan tight end, as we move on, he was asked on Twitter about an example of Jim Harbaugh doing some things in the gray area to succeed. And Scar, I'm going to read for the people that are just listening to the podcast, or maybe it's in too small of print for them to read. Let me read what Jake Butt had to say. Are you ready? Yes, you're ready. Okay. Here's Jake Butt. He said, our first spring ball as a team after he got hired, he told us we needed to improve across the board. So per NCAA rules, each team is allocated X amount of hours per week, and the maximum per day was 4 hours. Most teams set it up to be an hour and a half of meetings and 2.5 hours of practice. Harbaugh told us you get better at football by playing football. So he confirmed all 4 hours could be spent on the field. Not only that, and here's the gray area, it was 4 hours per individual player. So he divided the team into two, an A and B team. The B team would practice by themselves for 2 hours from 1 to 3. Then the A team would join them from 3 to 5 for 2 hours. By then, the individuals on the B team had completed their 4 hours, so the A team stayed out there for the last 2 by themselves. I think you can get that if you walk through that. We'll have Scar walk through it in a second. This is what Jake Butt had to say. Butt said that meant the coaches were out there for 6 total hours coaching with both teams. We got an insane amount of reps. He calls us up at the 3-hour mark and made a point. He didn't need 100 guys. If you don't want to be here, then don't be here. He needed 30 warriors, 11 on offense, 11 on defense, and a few more in special teams. We could win with that. 4-hour practices, and it's a point I've emphasized on here, were a psychological experiment. Butt went on to say everyone says they want to win. Everyone says they want to play in the NFL. Everyone says they want to contribute. And that 4th hour, your words meant nothing, and it became clear who could be counted on. And here's the last point that Jake Butt had to say. That first spring to me is the first instance of belief being instilled into the renewed Michigan program. There is a price to success. We didn't achieve the ultimate success, but what I love about the current program is how they embrace the challenge. The guys don't blink. I think he meant to right. The leadership is phenomenal. It's organic. These kind of things can't be quantified or measured, but it's clear as day when you see it. All right, Scar, a lot being said there by Jake Butt. What did you think?
I know a guy takes over a program. I know how Bo was. Bo, I've heard the stories about Bo, and he just made it that first spring was brutally difficult. I've read the Bear Bryant stuff, how brutally, demanding he was to weed out guys. A lot of guys do that. And Jim wanted to basically say, hey, listen, man, I'm here. I got a big, long contract. And if you guys don't want to work, you can pack it up. This is the program. We're going 4 hours here. And he's setting a standard. He's making a point. And he was smart to understand that, look, I got 140 guys in this team. While he took over the spring, there's probably, maybe 100, 110 guys. I remember as a young coach, one of my first job, there was like 65, 70 kids on this team I was coaching. The guy gives me 12 outside linebackers. And you got a lot of reps, Danny. When you're trying to develop your top 3 or 4 players, you got to give, you want to give reps to some of these young guys, but it's difficult at times. So there's an advantage to having, you can focus on less guys, give them more reps, so it was a smart move by Jim there. I'm sure his assistant coaches were pissed off because they were out there for 6 hours. But you know what? When you're making the kind of money these guys are making, work, earn it, man. You can be out there for 6 hours. So I applaud what Jim did to maximize the coaching that his players could get. It was a great idea. But go ahead. What are your thoughts on what I said so far?
Yeah, I wonder that when the NCAA, when they see something like this, do they say, hey, we need to make a rule to say that if you're in the film room or anywhere, you got to break this up. Like, so I see this, and Jake Butt made it a point to say that he got it cleared through the NCAA, but are we to believe that Michigan then doesn't watch any film, or that like they still have to do that? And how about working out? That's not counted. So they just used everything they could to practice, but they're still expected to do all this other stuff. So even though the coaches are out there for 6 hours, these players, and I think it's like this. I remember when it got down to working out. I mean, like they can't really force you to work out, but you're expected to be working out every day as well. And my guess is that you're also expected to be studying the film and whatever they have kind of, however they can, work the film room, whether it's with your team or the entire team or whatever else, you still have to be able to do that.
Yeah, I don't know how if the film, the film study was optional. Sometimes that's, optional, how that goes.
Yeah.
Could have been, but, I think it was a good strategy. Jim took over the program at a difficult time. Michigan State was at the height of their program, as good as they've done were when Jim got the job. Then obviously when Ohio State, when Urban had him, so it was a difficult time when Jim got the job. But again, I understand getting reps for your young players. And it wasn't cheating the rules. These guys were only there for 4 hours. And, when I think about that as a player, I would actually prefer that as a young player, because I know that for 2 hours of the day, I'm going to get some good individual coaching from my position coach. I'm going to get multiple reps. I'm going to get a chance to prove myself. So I would like that. When I think about it, I think it's a good thing because you're going to get some good in-your-face individual attention from your position coach. You're not sharing reps with 10, 12 guys. Now you're only sharing reps with 4 or 5 guys.
Yeah, I always wonder, and I don't know, this is going to be genius, and this probably is by Harbaugh. It's just like, how much is too much? I mean, how much is, driving guys for 4 hours? I could see like a 2-week, like 2-a-days in the summer or something, but, how much is too much when you're out there and, letting guys relax and, the wind down or cool off with their mind and stuff too. I don't know about that, but I knew when Harbaugh came in, like, he had so much success with the 49ers and then with Stanford and San Diego as well. Like, what was going to be the difference? And then right away, he comes up with, hey, we're going to have these satellite camps and we're going to do it right down in Alabama. I was like, well, that's genius. That was a genius move. And then he's like, we're going to travel the world. Where you guys want to come to Michigan? You want to go to Italy? You want to go to France? You want to go to, you got to go to South America? I was like, wow, that seemed like a pretty smart move, to me. And then, the signing with the stars looked like the Oscars. I thought, wow, that was brilliant, as well. And we know he's football, but then anything that you could possibly come up with.
Danny, though, when you're trying to build your program, and Ohio State's doing as good as they are, and Michigan State's winning, and you're trying to build. Sometimes you got to do some different things, some creative things. So I was applauding. I was applauding him on all that. I remember going to some of those 4-hour practices. I didn't stay the whole time, but I was like, man, when I played it was like 3 hours, maybe 3.5, at times. But
It went against a little bit, Scar. Like I just was talking about the travel the world, and people were like, "How could Michigan end up doing this?" And I don't know. Like I know they checked with everything, and they had somebody independent, floating the bill, and that wouldn't matter now with the NIL. You could just say, "Hey, we got somebody else paying for it. Shut up." But this was prior to NIL. But
I know, but Benny, I still to this day, I think that it's wrong. I think it's wrong that you can't have satellite camps because every kid around the country cannot afford to take unofficial trips to all around the country to learn about a different program.
Nick Saban didn't like you coming in his neck.
I know. I think it's BS.
Yeah, I
think. Listen, if Alabama wants to do something over here in Grand Rapids, fine. Let kids learn about that can't drive to Alabama and go visit the school, but they can at least meet the coaches.
I just wonder
every kid doesn't have parents that can drive them to these places, and the schools don't want to send every kid up on an official visit. They like to come on an unofficial visit, and every kid doesn't have parents or coaches that'll take them all over the country to visit these places.
It's a great point. I wonder, and I'd ask Jake Butt this question, like when they go over to France, and they're going to see the Mona Lisa, and it's a team deal. Is that count? Because I thought, I remember people walking through. You say, "Well, you're going to use a little bit of that time, for team bonding." Were they drilling 4 straight hours, and the coaches 6 hours when they were overseas? Walking through the Louvre and everything. I mean, how did they get through all of that? But maybe that was different. Maybe they rocked it out whenever they were on the field. But then when they went on the Europe trip, it was a little bit looser. That it wasn't the wake up. Here's your sheet. Here's your itinerary. You're waking up at 4:30 in the morning. And you'll go to bed at 7:30. We've got everything planned out for you in the meantime.
I think their trips now have eliminated all the practice. I don't think they even pretend to practice anymore. I think that was, basketball was going over in Europe and playing our basketball team, and the football team was like, well, I think Jim looked at that and said, why can't our guys get see the world? And he was finding a way to make that happen.
Okay. Well, it was interesting. It was good stuff. Well, I see people already talking about it in the chat. This is not anything fun, but it's also I want to hear Scar's opinion on it. And for those that don't know, there might be some people that are new here. Jim, played for Michigan back in the day, and then went on and coached 25 years at the high school level. Scar.
Yeah.
All right. Well, this Northwestern story is a story about hazing. And we're all familiar with hazing here. In the Daily Northwestern, the student newspaper, a former Northwestern University football player told the student newspaper that some of the hazing conduct investigated by the university involved coerced sexual acts. And then they had a second player confirm those details. And so the players came back over the weekend. They released a statement, current players, saying that Pat Fitzgerald, the head coach of the Wildcats, had no knowledge of the alleged incidents, and that the accusations from the former player were, quote, exaggerated and twisted, end quote. All right, Scar, this is people understand a little bit about this story. What are your thoughts in general here as we talk about it?
Okay, Denny, if I'm leading anything, if I'm leading young people in anything, if I'm leading a band, the debate team, the choir, the JV basketball team, the high school football team, I don't care what I'm leading, period. You better address hazing, period. And you better address it all the time, regularly, not once a month. They better know, you are on this, and you better hammer your seniors. So I put all this stuff always on the leader. So I'm not blaming the seniors. I'm not putting this on the captains. No, man, those guys are a reflection of you. Okay. So you create the culture as the head coach, the leader, and you better make sure that stuff isn't happening. Those are the things you try to instill in your seniors and your leaders. So that's that. That's the first statement on that. Supposedly it's been 6 months they were looking at this stuff, and you got one accuser, but then the rest of the team signed a document saying that this kid's wrong. So it'll be interesting to see where it goes. Is it just one guy pissed off? If there's more people that sign on for it, it's a terrible decision that Northwestern president has to make. I'd hate to see Fitz go out like this, but like you said, so if it's only the one kid and you got 100 some players signing on saying that that's exaggerated, I don't know where it's going to go. I don't want to be that president to have to make that decision. What else do I have here? Denny, I remember this one coach I really respect. I don't know if this has anything to do with it. It's just things you do sometimes to get control of your team. He called it the Coke can drill. So you got one guy that does something stupid, right? So what the coach would do is get a chair, put it in the middle of the field, put the kid in the chair, the one guy that screwed up, and give him a can of Coke. And the rest of the team is in a circle, and you're just running them and down-ups and push-ups and crushing them. You got it? You're crushing them, and they're all watching the kid that screwed up, and you're trying to build that peer pressure to not do something stupid. You know what I mean? I don't know if that has anything to do with this, but that's just something that came to my mind, that you got to really instill that kind of culture. But what else do I have here? Denny, we had it here in Metro Detroit. A guy I know at De La Salle High School here, lost his job. Some things that were happening there. You got to know what's going on with your team, man. You have to talk to your team, and you just got to know all this stuff. And you got to constantly address hazing, profanity, acting right in school, respecting teachers. Those are like daily conversations. You don't have it once a week. You are hammering on that stuff all the time.
Yeah, and from people that haven't I don't know, been in a fraternity or been in sports and had any kind of hazing involvement, I can't have much sympathy for any of the players that are involved. Everyone knows. I mean, everyone knows where a line is. You want to snatch somebody's mouth guard or hide their cleats or something because you think that's funny, or, they think that's team building, whatever. I mean, we can have that conversation, but when you're crossing the line of humiliating somebody or, getting into some, like they were talking about, have them take snaps when they're naked or something, immediately somebody knows that. Now, I don't know how much Pat Fitzgerald knows. I don't know how much he should have known. I mean, those are the two things. I could sit here and guess, knowing how things have played out like this, that if I had to guess, I don't think that he's going to be the head coach at Northwestern very much longer. If he didn't know anything about it, then he should be out there right now saying that he doesn't know anything about it. And he's had a few days and I haven't really seen anything from him. So he's got his, I don't like that part, but this is still the early stages. And I want to wait and see what Pat Fitzgerald has to say. But, him resigning, him being fired, the president has already come back. There was, he was like, you get 2 weeks without, suspension without being paid. And, he said, well, I'm paraphrasing what the president said. Oh, maybe it should be a little bit longer. So this already is a story that's growing bigger. I don't know how Pat Fitzgerald survives this, but let's hear from him.
Denny, I used to talk to my coaches all the time about profanity. Not cussing in front of the kids. And if a kid cusses, we got to punish them, push-ups, whatever. Just let them know we're not going to accept profanity. Because what happens, Denny, is when you're 11-1 and the superintendent or the athletic director or whoever sees a little bit of cussing on the sideline, they don't hear it. Okay. But if you're 1-11, that profanity, it's a bigger problem now. You understand what I'm saying? That's just kind of, I want to end on this too. I want to say this about, in my era, the older guys helped the younger guys. Yeah, we were tough on them in practice, but you look after those young guys. We didn't have any hazing in my years at Michigan.
Nothing. You guys did nothing, huh?
We didn't do anything like that. You listen, man, you pound on them in practice, and they go through it, but you're in the end of the day, you're going to help those kids develop, the young guys develop. That was my experience.
Scar, this is a very small hazing story, but I always I think about it whenever, every year you see something kind of hazing, whether it's fraternities or sports organizations or whatever else. When I was just a freshman playing football, I was in the locker room and one of the seniors came up to me and the senior said, "Hey, these guys are going to come in here and they are going to grab you and they are going to stuff you into the locker and they're going to lock it and they're going to tell you, hopefully somebody sees you in the next couple hours or you're going to have to spend the night. Now, know that they're only going to be out there for a minute and then they're going to come back here and let you in. It's just a hazing situation. So I get told that. And no sooner than a minute later, I got 5 guys coming in from the varsity, grabbing a hold of me and stuffing me in a locker. Then the locker it was big enough where, you can sit in there and then they lock it and they say almost exactly what he said. And they walked out. Now, just like he said, a minute later, they come back and it was all fun and games. Hey, you're a good sport and everything else. Now, if I wasn't told that would have been that would have been a tough situation. I would have fought a lot more. I've resisted a little bit, but I was like, okay, I know what's going to happen. That would have been terrifying. And then if I'd have been stuffed in the locker and they would have taped it shut, I'd have been like, what if nobody comes here? That would have been very distressing for a couple of minutes. As it was somewhat distressing, even though somebody told me what was going to happen. But I consider that hazing, but I also felt like, I was let in on it. So I didn't feel like it was that big of a deal. So I don't know.
Yeah, Danny, our world's changed in the last 20, 30, 40, 50. The lawyers have changed all this stuff with hazing. You got these kids getting drunk and then dying, drinking too much, some of these frat kids. And
right.
You got to be smarter, man. And the leader, if I got a job in leadership and I'm leading young kids, man, I'm hammering on this regularly, period.
Right. Those guys back in the day, if they would do that nowadays and the kid would have, banged his head, got a concussion, you could have sued everybody and, everybody would have been fired and everything else. So there is part of it.
Yeah. So
that's it. And there is this latest part. I didn't see this story exactly on who knew what, but a picture, and they're talking about this dry erase board with a list in the locker room with players on the list and saying that, that this is a smoking gun and that Fitz would have known about it. Well, if that's the case, then he's going to get fired, and he'll move on and, whatever it'll be, it's too bad because, Fitzgerald was a great player at Northwestern. And when I think of Northwestern football, I don't think about the, football and sports seem to me at Northwestern to be secondary. It's really about education and, sports is secondary. It doesn't seem like that at any other place. No offense to anybody else, but because, Northwestern is different. And here they are, at the front of this, hazing thing. And so Fitzgerald, who was a great player and would have been, seemed like the perfect fit. A couple of years ago when we were doing coaching rankings, I had him number 1 Scar on that list. And now here he is, potentially disgraced and out the door.
Yeah, we'll see how it plays out, man. That president has to make a difficult decision. They're accumulating more information and, we'll see. You got the team signing a document. You got parents, and the kid came in to talk to the president. So that's why those presidents get all that money, Danny. They got to make these tough decisions.
Well, and that's it. And people are, giving their story. That like you'd hear about us. You mentioned the fraternities. Like it does seem like it's every year, maybe every other year that you see the story about charges being brought up on the fraternity, and they're gonna. Try to, send some people to jail for, what a manslaughter or whatever, by, they're jamming a fifth of tequila down, a pledge's throat. Like, sure, 30 years ago you saw that. It's like, oh, that's the first time you saw it. Well, it's every other year for the last 30 years you have a story like that. If some guy in a fraternity, said, oh, man, I'm getting a real tough deal, man. We were, put a half gallon of, Tanqueray down a pledge's throat, made him bong it. It's like, well, you guys, how stupid could you be? It's like,
Danny, I dealt with some of this stuff, and I remember hammering my team, the whole team, because they used to, when I heard a thing, they called it Freshman Fridays. They used to, they used to mess with and slap around the freshmen in the locker room. And I got wind of it, and I just crushed them. Down ups cure a lot of stuff. You run them and piss them off and embarrass them and put some guys on the bench. You gotta piss some people off until they get the message that we ain't having it, man. Yes, I remember that Freshman Friday, and I ended that, and we didn't have it anymore. You gotta know what's going on.
Yeah, I would think, like, I don't know, it's real easy right here. It's right now. Let me say that's very easy. If I'm a coach, some of the first things that I'm saying to my players is that, you're going to respect your teammates, and in any situation where you're talking about drinking, how you're treating women, how you're treating, other students, or who you're representing, what we're, all of these things that you have to say to them. It's like some of it, it's like, wow, man, are we able to? Yes. I mean, there's certain things that you need to know about. And one of them that are going to be covered in, like, the top 5 things that you need to know about as you set the first foot on campus. And one of those is going to be involved is hazing. So,
yeah, that's just, that's people talk about culture that you establish. That's in any line of work, any leader in any business, organization, whatever, man. You establish the culture. What are you going to accept? How are we going to treat people? It's all the same stuff, man, whether it's a football team, restaurant, whatever, man. You establish that.
drinking and driving, how you're
Yeah.
treating women, how you're treating the rest of the student
There
population,
you go.
all of those things. Those are the things that you're talking about. So, well, Scar, what else? We got the people here. Anybody else got
No, any questions, any comments that we didn't cover that some of the callers had? Anything real quick?
Well, a lot of people were talking about their own anecdotal experiences about getting hazed, but specific football,
Okay.
no.
All right. No, it's just I'm just really encouraged with the view of that anonymous coach, because that coach is right on time with what's happening in Ann Arbor, and that says something, man. That the guy's. I wish I knew who it was, but he is absolutely right on time with what's happening in Ann Arbor. Talent, coaches, culture, a lot of good things happening.
Well, and what you're talking about, and we went through, Harbaugh and whatever you call it, the gray areas, or some of the things that he did that, tried initially, and some of the things he kept doing. He has got this program now where he is sitting, and you saw how difficult it was to do. I mean, Ohio State is a premier program, the elite program. A lot of the issues were Ohio State, but you're right, Michigan State along the way, everybody else. But being able to break through and now have it sit where it is, where not only can you see the light at the end of the tunnel, but they're sitting in a great position. The program has never been in as good a position it is right now, with the head coach and the players and with everything surrounding. So, tough.
Denny, this is how it was in the 70s and 80s and 90s. This is where we need to be. I don't want to say this is not where it's ever been. This is where we want to be, okay?
Oh.
Where everybody's aiming at Michigan, okay? Everybody's circling Michigan on their schedule. Everybody's recruiting against Michigan. When I went on my recruiting trips to Illinois, Michigan State, Wisconsin, they all had their guys in pictures around their football facility catching touchdowns against Michigan, making a tackle against Michigan. You understand, Denny? When you're the top dog, that's where we want to be, where everybody hates us and they're gunning for us.
I like the correction. Back when he was playing.
That's right. So this is the way. This is the way we want to be. The way it was in when we had our era. Everybody goes through it, and we don't want to dip back.
69 through 2007, it felt like.
There you go.
For me. All right, Scar, great job. I look forward to talking with you next week, whatever day it is.
Next Wednesday, Denny. I'll be ready to roll. Go Blue.
Well, mark it down. There he is, Jim Scarcelli.